Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I am the food enthusiast here at J. Moore Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those of you joining us for the first time, feel free to drop your questions for our guest or for myself in the comment box, and I will be checking from time to time. Jonathan Deutsch, PhD, CHE, CRC, is a professor in the Department of Food and Hospitality Management in the College of Nursing and Health Professions at Drexel University. He is the founding program director of Drexel's Food Innovation and Entrepreneurship programs. He is the vice president of the Upcycled Food Foundation and previously was the inaugural James Beard Foundation Impact Fellow, leading a national curriculum effort on food waste reduction for chefs and culinary educators. He was named a food waste warrior by Food Tank. John recently was mentioned as one of the industry's smartest and focused minds. Let's welcome Jonathan.
Thanks, Dara.
Hi, Jonathan, John, Professor, what would you like me to call you?
You can surprise me. I've been called worse.
Okay, just don't call you late for dinner, right?
That's right.
Okay. I always ask at the beginning of the show, other than doing the show today, what else is on your plate to do?
Today, I just finished a 4-hour class, our first of the winter term, called Food Product Development, which is my favorite class to teach. And then I have a couple meetings. And then I'm doing my other favorite thing to do, which is see our alumni. I'm in touch with a lot of our alumni from over the years, and with one particular alum who I'm also a frustrated baker, and she puts my baking to shame. We do a cookie exchange. I always have to attach a gift card to my cookies to apologize for what's inside, but it's still a good deal because her cookies are phenomenal. We had a COVID delay from our holiday cookie swap, so we're doing a food industry holiday, which always happens in January after the New Year's rush.
Well, that's what happens with most restaurants. After the holidays, and they do their Christmas parties or their holiday parties for their staffs.
That's right.
I'm curious, what's your inspiration to go down the culinary path?
I really never thought about doing anything else. I started cooking professionally when I was 14. I started messing around in the kitchen probably 4 or 5 years before that. And it's all I ever wanted to do was cook. I thought wrongly that I really wanted to be a restaurant cook. You know, that's sort of all I knew was a chef, fine dining restaurant owner, and went that route for early in my career. Realized it wasn't for me. Found my way into research and development for food companies, doing product development, and then further found my way into education, teaching cooking, and for a while did both of those things with 2 different hats on. And now I've combined them into one role where I teach applied food product development, work with the industry.
Well, we lost you for a second.
Economy, aspects of food, and basic cooking and other things.
Well, we lost you for a couple seconds, so we'll come back in. Let's talk about your main gig, the Drexel Food Lab. I learned about it through the Specialty Food Association, which I always go to the Fancy Food Show in New York, the International Fancy Food Show. And in their bulletin, they talked about your students going in to the show and looking for what the trends were during the summer of 2023. So that's how I learned about the Food Lab and you. Tell us more about Drexel's Food Lab.
Sure.
What opportunities are there for students?
So the Drexel Food Lab is an applied food product development and culinary innovation lab. We help food companies, nonprofits, other organizations from startups through multinationals and others, solve food system problems through new food products or improvements to food products. So some examples, we have three main portfolios of projects. One portfolio is around sustainability, so promoting sustainable food products or taking food that would otherwise be wasted and upcycling it into new food products. Health promotion, so food alternatives to drugs, therapeutic foods, health promoting foods, and access, more good food for more people, sustainable food, things like sodium reduction, sugar reduction, and so on. We have one full-time employee named Rachel Sherman, who's a pastry chef and also, like me, a research chef who works at that intersection of culinary arts and food science. And everyone else in the lab, there's about 12, I would say 12 to 15 students at any given time. Everyone else in the lab is a student from undergraduate through PhD, studying everything from culinary arts, nutrition, food science, the sort of things you'd expect. But we also have a med student who's a phenomenal baker and is really interested in culinary medicine. We have a data science student who did our undergrad with us and is looking at big data and so on. So it's truly interdisciplinary, and it's very focused on problem solving. And I always emphasize that our real product is not the food products that we work on. It's our future colleagues, workforce, graduates who, instead of spending 4 years learning and then doing an internship or sending out a resume, are really learning while doing throughout their time with us.
So, I mean, like you said, undergrads in culinary arts and science, grads in culinary and food service, certificates in food entrepreneurship and innovation. So companies come to you and you help them develop. We talked about the Specialty Food Association and that you took the students to the Fancy Food Show. For those of you who have never been, if you've ever seen the Jacob Javits Center in New York, it's like 4 city blocks. I'm trying to even remember.
Maybe
it's
more.
huge.
Yeah.
It's 34th Street on up, and 2 levels of food, specialty food, drinks, international. There's from Italy to Greece to Turkey to the Asians, Thailand, you name a country, they're represented there with foods that they're developing and foods that they're offering. And it can be overwhelming. So you took, what was it, 6 students to the Fancy Food Show?
I think it was closer to 10.
Were they given certain subjects to look at, or they just went off on their own and developed what they saw?
It was a combination, and we use this system in product development frequently, where you really start with a broad landscape. So at the beginning, and the show's over 3 days, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Not everyone did all 3 days, but at the beginning, you just want to take things in. No agenda, no to-do list. Wander, taste, smell, talk. Just let your senses be overwhelmed, and it is overwhelming.
Absolutely.
And then at the end of that first period, take some time to reflect and visualize. What stood out to you? What are the flavors that, even if you had it 30 bites ago and 2 hours ago, are still with you? What are you still thinking about? What would you go back for, right? Because the first bite is a taste. The second bite, we're eating, right? And what are we eating? What do we want to eat more of? And then think about those, put them into some themes. I still remember this product. It's a little bit like this other product. What do they have in common? What are the common threads? Those become themes. And then the next day, you can go through the aisles again, but with more focus, right? This is what stood out to me the first day. Chili crisps and salsa matcha and those kinds of flavors. So now let's look for other things in that category that are complementary to that or deeper into that. So you have almost like a T shape of breadth and depth, and you have multiple themes that you're exploring more deeply. And then at the last day, at the end, what we're really trying to do is take those themes and sort of codify them, eliminate the ones that are sort of one-offs or flukes or fads, and say what's really happening in this space, and maybe even elevating them a little bit. So if we see, let's say we see a lot of tinned fish, and we see a lot of anchovies, and we see krill for the first time. What are we really seeing here? What we're seeing is a larger theme around sustainable seafood and lower on the food chain fish that were underappreciated, getting some recognition, right? So trying to elevate from words to themes to trends.
You're saying trends. I think they just came out with the winter trends from the Fancy Food Show out on the West Coast. I think, or it might have been one of the articles you were involved with. I'm not sure. I read so many things that there is tinned vegan fish.
Yes.
And cocktails that are a meal in a glass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, savory cocktails are big, as are low and zero and low proof cocktails, low and no alcohol cocktails.
So I was just here. I mean, it was interesting. I found that is it Pantone that does the colors? Who does the colors? Peach Fuzz is the color, and that peach is now the fruit of the year.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to look at it. The visual and the olfactory together. I think it's fascinating. I tend not to look at the world that way. And one of the interesting things that people don't think about, one of the reasons peach is working so well, peach is one of those flavors where, from a food science perspective, natural flavor, which are chemically derived, can be really evocative of the real thing, or they could be very fake, right? So I'm sure, I don't want to mention any brands, but I'm sure you've had candy and it's supposed to be raspberry or green apple or something, and it doesn't actually taste like the fruit. It tastes like the name. And peach flavors have gotten so good. And so it used to be a very challenging essence to capture. And the science really is behind the scenes on a lot of these products and trends.
The peach happens to be a favorite flavor of mine, the peach teas. Anything with a peach behind it. There's now, I found in an African store, I found a pineapple tea. So all these flavors. So what else is trending? Infused honeys, dates as a replacement for sugar. There's so many trends that it overwhelms. Is there one that you see that's coming forward that you think maybe isn't that great a trend? It's a fluke?
Well, there are some that I think are big trends and smaller trends, and I can share. So what just came out, so the Winter Fancy Food Show is next week in Las Vegas, and I'll be there. And then what came out in the fall was the trend predictions for 2024. Some of them are very specific and I think are a little bit broader. So, for example, Calabrian chilies are very trendy right now, and I couldn't agree more that they're trendy. But I don't see that as the big trend. I see the big trend, I would call it nuanced, and have called it nuanced spice. So when I was coming up in the industry, there was spicy and not spicy. Is it a spicy salsa or a mild salsa? Is it a spicy chili or a mild chili? Now we're talking about flavors of, is it a floral, fruity spice? Is it a roasted dry spice, right? Is it a spice combined with other ingredients like cumin, or is it a pure chili, right? So there's a lot more nuance to it. And I think Calabrian chilies are part and parcel of that larger trend. And then there are big trends. One I contributed to this report is called upscaling the everyday. So one of the things we've seen is that with COVID and with inflation and with a lot of financial uncertainty, dining has declined a little bit, although it's coming back. And people are holding their dollars a little bit closer to their wallets than they used to. But that doesn't mean the death of high-end specialty luxury ingredients, because people are finding opportunities to say, you know what, rather than going out for a $60 steak, let's buy the same quality steak for $20 and put some really fine sea salt on it and have a sort of restaurant quality meal in the comfort of our home. And we're seeing things like truffle oil, fine sea salts, tinned seafood I would put in this category as well. Some really high-end stuff, really indulgent cheeses and charcuterie, really being part of the home pantry in a way that they weren't. Those used to be really, really restaurant foods, and at home you would have more mass market kind of foods.
The mock food, the mock hamburgers, the things of that nature, they're doing, vegan cheese, vegan this, vegan that, and they're replicating these flavors. I feel like we're going back to Star Trek and the replicator. Can we make this? Can we make shrimp? Can we,
Yeah.
And these are all things that they're doing with plant-based foods. We were talking about drinks. We are coming into dry January.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ramifications and pluses and minuses on this. And mocktails, people are more conscious about not drinking alcohol. There is a non-alcoholic bottle shop here in Baltimore called Modern World, which is all these different choices that you can have that taste like maybe that ginger beer, whatever it might be, but has no alcohol to it. I think you co-wrote or contribute to a story about dry January and how it's affecting restaurants, or how it should.
I did just this week. Yeah, I write a weekly column for Restaurant Business, and actually I didn't finish what else I'm doing today. So the end of my day will be a zero proof happy hour. That's pub crawl, zero proof pub crawl, started by a company called Zero Proof Go, which is helping restaurants navigate this world. It used to be that if you didn't drink, you'd have at a bar, you'd have a soda or you'd have a glass of juice. And now there are zero proof and cocktails that, the word mocktail has become sort of controversial. Some people are very opposed to it. But zero proof cocktails that really rival any cocktail in terms of its flavor and thoughtfulness and quality of ingredients and price point for that matter. So done well, I think the ultimate maturity will be that alcohol and proof becomes a feature of a cocktail in the same way, a good bartender will say, do you prefer something more citric or more bitter or more fruity? Would you like something low alcohol, medium, high, no? And you could say, look, I'm gonna start the evening with a stiff drink, and I'm gonna slow down because I'm driving or because I limit myself to one or whatever the reason. and keep that same quality of culinary experience, but without that one ingredient that we think we're so dependent on for our bar and beverage program. So it's been a really interesting trend.
And the restaurateur can keep the price point in there.
Correct. That's what's in it for them, right? Is so the story I wrote for Restaurant Business was I write an advice column where I answer real reader questions. And this question was, Dry January is catching on in his community. How do I keep margins up? He doesn't really have a strong food program. And, he depends on those alcohol sales. And the answer is to really put as much thought into your zero proof program as your regular beverage program.
Let's come around, because I think you founded the Upcycle Food Foundation. Am I correct?
I'm one of the founders. There were 9 original members, and I'm certainly one of them.
And let's talk a little bit about that. I found that very interesting. It really deals with food waste, not only in restaurants, but it can be adapted at home.
Sure. Upcycled food is a movement where we're taking food that would otherwise be wasted and elevating it to higher use. There's a newer version of this, but there's something called the food recovery hierarchy that the EPA and USDA put out that say that the best thing you can do is reduce sources of surplus food. But if you have excess food, you should really ideally make it available for human consumption. And if it's not fit for human consumption, I saw someone commented, dog treats could be made into pet food. What we really want to avoid is perfectly good food that is so resource intensive, finding its way to compost or to landfill, where it's just going to generate greenhouse gases and not, in addition to the waste generated and moving it to landfill and its decomposition, are all the resources that went into producing it. And we are producing about 33 to 40% of our food supply in the US that is never even consumed. We're putting all this energy into growing it, moving it around, selling it, storing it, and then disposing of it. And at the same time, we have a growing population and our food needs are increasing. So rather than talking about another green revolution and how do we put more food on more tables for the growing population, we need to first talk about what is the food we have, how can we put it to its best use, and then what else do we need to do to grow the food supply chain.
I think in one of the things I was perusing, most households, if they're using broccoli, they don't use the stems.
Yeah.
And the tips that you might have when you're doing asparagus, you cut off the ends.
Yeah.
Now, restaurants might make asparagus soup out of this, but it can be used at home.
Absolutely, and home cooks can make asparagus soup the same way, right? We just we did a project. This is, by the way, not just a home problem, but an industrial problem, right? You when you go to a salad bar, you see the broccoli florets, you don't see the broccoli stems, right? We made the most delicious pickles you could imagine, bread and butter pickles that were just crinkle cut broccoli stems. There's no rule that you can only make a pickle with a cucumber, right? You can pickle anything. So, thinking creatively and applying culinary innovation can have real impact on food system and sustainability. So that's really our focus. We have a project right now with the EPA called the Chef WPM, Culinary Home Empowerment for Food Prevention and Minimization. And it's really focused on videos, social media, TikTok style videos and classes to help home cooks reduce their food waste. The average household wastes about $1,200 to $1,500 of food that they purchase and never eat. That's everything from restaurant leftovers to the fish that you defrosted that you meant to cook before you went to happy hour and decided it's too old, or the gallon of milk where half went bad instead of buying a quart or a half gallon, right? All of that collectively comes out to about $100 a month for a household of four. And when you put it in those terms, who wouldn't want to reduce their food waste, right? That's money you could put back in your pocket to do something a lot more fun than throwing out food.
Is there anything one can do with expired milk?
Well, the best thing to do with milk, I think, is make a quick cheese, and ideally before it expires. But when it's kind of, you can smell when it's like just getting on the cusp. And if you do have surplus milk, anyone who's made cheese knows that it takes a lot of milk to make a little bit of cheese. And so it's a good way if we, at the end of the semester here at the culinary school, for example, if we have a few gallons of milk left and we don't think it's going to survive the winter break or the summer vacation or so on, it's so easy. It takes, under 15 minutes, you can make a quick, like a queso fresco or a ricotta or something like that. That's just, acidulated milk and strained. You can use the whey as a marinade or a beverage, and you can use the curds for any sort of cooking, and it'll last for a while. You could throw it in the freezer. Frozen milk is not very great texture-wise, although you can bake with it. But frozen ricotta is perfectly fine to use and holds up really well.
Well, I can keep talking to you and keep talking to you, but I think I need to sort of wrap up a little bit here. So we're going to come to, I want to make sure if there's anything that I missed. Oh, I wanted to talk to you. There's a couple things. How are you willing to share what your thoughts might be, what the restaurant scene is going to look like in 10 years?
That's a great question. I think if I had to predict, the restaurant scene is going to be a lot more expensive as a percent of our income than it is now. And it's going to become, I don't think a lot of people are saying it's the death of fine dining. It's the death of fine dining. I don't think that's true. I think people will always have the interest in splurging and commemorating special occasions. I think fine dining will be okay. And I also think casual everyday dining will be fine. I think it's the middle that's going to get hit hardest. I think it's if it's $20 for an entree to go out and have something that you could make at home, but just want the convenience of not making it home. You might say, well, it's, I know mathematically it's not a good investment, but it's nice not to have to cook. At what point, $30, $40, do you say, you know what, enough? I'm just gonna make some scrambled eggs or some pasta with tomato sauce. I can't keep spending this kind of money on that mid-level dining. So I think we're going to see a little bit of not necessarily shrinking in the restaurant sector, but rearranging. And I think we're going to see this kind of like hourglass effect of growth at the top and growth at the bottom and a shrinking middle. That's my prediction.
Mm-hmm. And we talked off air a little bit. There is a show on Netflix called You Are What You Eat. It's Stanford University's study about twins and what they eat, but it's also about where our food is coming from, farm-raised fish, the cattle, the chicken, how they're growing up, and contamination. Did you have an opportunity to watch it or have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I confess I haven't watched the whole thing, but I've watched a bit. And yeah, I mean, I think I commend them, first of all. I think these are issues, the sustainability and the quality of our food supply are something that every citizen needs to know about. And we don't emphasize food enough. We talk about politics and we talk about science and culture and art, and there's this little corner of food, right? But food is so fundamental. Without it, none of that other stuff exists. And we really need to start thinking about the true cost of food. We we talk about, oh, isn't this wonderful? Chicken's on sale. It's $1.99 a pound. Let's rush out to the supermarket. Who's paying for the health and safety of the workers? Who's paying for the environmental runoff? Who's paying for the true cost of that great value for us, right? And I'm not saying I'm an omnivore, I'll confess. I'm not saying that everyone should switch to plant-based. I think there are pros and cons with any diet and any lifestyle. But I think what we can all agree universally is that we all need to be a lot more thoughtful about what we're putting into our bodies and who's really paying for that food, right? Or if something is a great deal, let's say QSR, which is typically called fast food, quick serve restaurants. Wow, what a great deal. I can get this extra mega value meal for such a low price. There's healthcare, there's transportation, there's a lot of other things that are going into that cost, many of which are subsidized. So I would encourage everyone to be thoughtful and make decisions that are informed and make decisions that you stand by, rather than just saying this is cheap and it's available.
Before I come to my questions that they ask at the end of the show, I want to remind people that you can find Drexel Food Lab on Facebook, on Instagram. You can find Upcycled Foods as well on Facebook and Instagram. And all those links are, I'm sitting here like you can really see my screen, that all the links have come up in the comments section. So please feel free to click through. This is a fascinating subject. I can see why you're so committed to it and what you're doing. So we'll come back to my questions at the end of the show. What was the best bite you had all week?
What a great question. I'm going to say the best bite I had was just a little while ago. It's latency bias. The last thing I ate is always the best thing I ate, and the next thing I eat is always going to be better. It is our first day of our winter term, and our chef who teaches our quantity food production class gave me an olive oil cake flavored with orange zest that really knocked my socks off, especially considering it was the first day of class. And this was supposed to be everyone get comfortable in the kitchen, know where everything is stored, make a couple simple things just to feed yourselves lunch. And then next week is when we start to ramp up. And it blew me away. So we're off to a great start in the semester.
Terrific. I did a book. It was a bunch of various culinary greats who donated recipes. The book benefited the Kidney Foundation, but there was an olive oil cake recipe.
I love olive oil cakes. I think they're great.
Just wonderful. If you could go back and give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Slow down. I think I was a little bit of a overachiever, wanting to get to the destination, whatever that was, and I did it. But I think I should have spent a little bit more time on the journey.
You didn't have a chance to enjoy the journey because you were pushing forward.
I'll enjoy it now.
Yeah. If you wake up tomorrow morning with a new talent, what would that new talent be?
I'm a frustrated tuba player. I love playing tuba. I've done it since, trombone first and then tuba in high school. And I'm a very devoted, mediocre player, and I would love to get good.
Okay. That's the first time somebody wanted to be a tuba player.
I try to be original.
What was it last week? Mark Butcher said something to the effect, and he says, I go back and tell my 18-year-old self, college self, is learn how to play a song on the guitar.
Oh, that's a great advice.
Learn how to sing a song and then compliment the woman and play her the song.
That's great advice.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's been more than one, maybe two. What was your ultimate culinary fail?
Um, I was a very good student, and I remember very vividly in culinary school when I was learning how to poach fish. The instructor emphasized so strongly, do not let the water boil. Do not let it get too hot. It should be smiling, just barely rippling. And so I really took it to heart, and I made some poached, very rare fish, which was sent back. And then I did another one, and it was sent back again. He said, "What's going on?" I said, what are you doing? There's not enough heat on this thing. You know, it's you have to use your senses. I really emphasize, don't just follow the recipe. You really need to immerse yourself with all your senses.
Wouldn't happen to been Chef Pate, was it?
No,
At the CIA?
no, it wasn't.
No,
It was
I did.
Joe Weisberg was his name. He taught
Yeah.
international cuisine.
No, I took people up there when I had this club, and we did 4 days
Oh, nice.
a class. But our chef was Chef Pate,
No, I don't know.
Patey. Just curious.
Great name.
Probably around the same time. And is there something I didn't ask you that I probably should have, or you want the audience to hear?
I would like to promote our programs a little bit because I think we do a great job. So if anyone in the audience or any friends and family of an audience member are thinking about studying food, we have undergraduate degrees in culinary arts and science, graduate degrees in culinary and food science, undergraduate certificate in food entrepreneurship, graduate certificate in food innovation. And of course, the Drexel Food Lab is ready to help anyone with food product development or culinary innovation needs.
Perfect. You did that like you really know what you're talking about.
I've done it a couple times.
Jonathan, Professor, John, I don't know what to call you, so I'm calling you all three. I want to thank you so much for a very insightful and wonderful interview. And I'm just going to wrap up with a couple of announcements for my audience. Enjoy your cookie exchange.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. Okay, everyone. Next week's show, our guest will be AJ Fuhrman, a self-proclaimed brunch aficionado. This Los Angeles native is obsessed with brunch, not just as a meal, but as a cultural touch point. You can find her on Instagram at Hollywood Brunch. Let us know what your brunch musts are. My food tidbit, talking brunch. Brunch seems to be the new dinner. Brunch provides a more affordable option for consumers seeking to gather with friends and family as opposed to dinner. Note, both lunch and dinner visits at restaurants were down in 2023. Also, Baltimore County Restaurant Week starts tomorrow on January 12th, and Baltimore City Restaurant Week starts on January 26th. Monthly J Moore Living is giving away $50 gift cards to some of your favorite local restaurants. Visit jmoreliving.com/contest to enter to win. If you need to reach me, you can reach me at food@jmoreliving.com or on Instagram. Give me a follow at Dara Cooks. All shows are immediately archived in video form on J Moore's Facebook page and jmoreliving.com. Feel free to dig into our video archives of past shows. We truly appreciate it when you share our show with friends and family. May your plates always remain full. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next Thursday.